Hey friends, my name is Dave Maupin, and I'm so excited to be here tonight to be part of Mansion Memories, Making It Magical. You know, some people though call me the Wizard of the Stars because I know a lot about the stars. It's really fun for me to be here as part of Mansion Memories, and they're making it magical happening because I really believe in the mission of Mansion Memories. You know what they do? They're a nonprofit organization and they help out children and families in crisis. Do you know the definition of the word crisis? I had to look it up. It means being in trouble or danger or really in some difficult position. And for kids, you must know that's very, very scary. But you know, for adults too, adults can be in crisis. In fact, I'm going to tell you a story about when I was a Navy navigator and tell you about a time when I was in crisis. Actually, I had a whole crew of 10 men, and we were flying over the Atlantic Ocean in a winter storm. And there was clouds everywhere, and then there was lightning. And the clouds were all bright in different colors with the lightning flashes. And then the rain came down, and then the hail came down, and the airplane had high winds, making it move all around the place. We had to put our seatbelts on because it was really kind of scary, even inside the airplane. But suddenly there was a huge crash and a bright light, and everyone on the crew was blinded by the bright light. Well, we were only 200 feet above the ocean. That's not very high. When you go in a commercial airplane, you're up at 30,000 feet. Well, we were 200 feet above the ocean, and suddenly the pilot was blinded. And the rest of us couldn't see either. But luckily, the only man on the airplane who had his eyes closed just at that instant that lightning bolt went was the co-pilot. And so he opened his eyes after he heard the explosion, and he saw the pilot was in trouble. So he took control of the airplane and pulled us up to a higher, safer altitude, and we made it home safely. So for me, that was a very short crisis. So I appreciate the fact that this is what Mansion Memory is all about, is helping children who are in scary times too. So we used to do these at the beautiful Burridge Mansion, but now we have to be virtual. Hey, do you know what the word virtual means? Maybe your mommy or your daddy could help you with that definition. So we're kind of virtual right now. I'm alive, but just like a TV tube, really. You're watching me like a TV screen. And you're seeing me on the internet, on the Facebook, YouTube, or the Mansion Facebook or YouTube. So that's what we're doing right now tonight. And it's my privilege now to begin telling you some more stories about my friends in the night sky, because I want them to be your friends as well. So the first thing we're going to do is look at my whiteboard over here, and I'll begin drawing some stories for you, okay? Hey, my new star friends, I just realized I forgot to tell you the end of my story. So after the lightning struck and we safely landed again, we looked at our airplane, and amazing, there was a hole in the front part. The fuselage of the airplane was all blown off. There was a special place where we had a radar for looking at submarine periscopes, and it was all gone because the lightning hit our airplane, which is why it was so loud for us. So that was definitely the end of our crisis. That was over. And I'm going to tell you another story, though, from Greek mythology from 5,000 years ago that talks about a beautiful woman who was in crisis. Her name was Andromeda. But before I tell you about Andromeda, I have to tell you about her mother, Cassiopeia. Okay, so when we go outside, though, your parents have to help you find the constellation called Cassiopeia. Can you say Cassiopeia? Say that, Cassiopeia. Well, that's a little hard. Think about if you had a sister named Cassie and you gave her a can of peas. You said, Cassie, open these peas. So then you say, Cassie, open peas. Cassiopeia. One more time, I want to hear you. Cassiopeia. Very good. Okay, so here is this group of stars that looks like an M or a W. As a matter of fact, later on tonight, if you go outside, you'll see it look like this, like a regular letter M. This is called Cassiopeia's throne. It's the constellation Cassiopeia. A constellation is simply a group of stars. It looks like something in the sky. So these are stories that were told 5,000 years ago. And these are stories that I told my students when I taught at Stanford University. I taught a class called Celestial Navigation, how to navigate by the stars. And I had to tell them these stories too. So even though you might only be 4 or 5 or 10 years old, you can learn the names of these stars. And then you have to say to your parents, the wizard says that he taught these as college students, and he taught them at Stanford, and he says if I learn them and know them, I can probably go to Stanford also. So if that's true, if you learn the names of these stars, you tell your parents to start saving for Stanford because it's very, very expensive. So Cassiopeia is this letter M, and the reason she's in the sky is that she was a beautiful queen. But even though she was beautiful, and she knew it, she just told everybody about how beautiful she was. And she went around like this all the time, saying, oh, see how beautiful I am? Do you know anybody like that? Nobody likes somebody who's always bragging about how beautiful they are. So it made some people really mad. In fact, these people were called Nereids, or in Greek mythology, they were special little creatures who lived in the ocean. And they complained to their king, Poseidon, about Cassiopeia. And Poseidon was very upset. And he says, well, she has to be punished. So what he did, he put her on her throne in the sky for the rest of her life. And that's why we'll see her tonight. But the worst part is because the earth is always rotating from the east to the west, from the west to the east, the skies are always rotating also, and sometimes Cassiopeia is upside down. And her head is in the water. And if you lived in Greece, you would see that the constellation is half of the day upside down. So that's the fate of Cassiopeia. Now, there's only one star that I want you to learn right now. But you have to first find the constellation Cassiopeia. So the way to do that, because if you go outside, there's just stars everywhere. Scientists tell us that we can see 2,500 stars in one night. But then you have to stay up all night. Will your parents let you stay up all night? I don't think so. So we're going to go out and you have to say, Mom, Dad, teach me, point me towards the direction north. Well, if your dad was not a Boy Scout or your mom was not a Girl Scout or a Campfire Girl or a Bluebird, they might not know the direction north. So you say, point me towards the San Bernardino Mountains or point me towards Canada, okay? And if you go out and then put your right hand above your head like this, it'll be right around that letter M or W in the night sky. That's Cassiopeia. But there's a very special star that was one of my navigating friends. Not all the stars were for navigators, but this one was. And you have to imagine, so part of what I want to teach you is how to have a good imagination. Now this star was wearing a coonskin cap. You probably have never seen a coonskin cap before, but when I was a little boy, there was a favorite show called Daniel Boone. No, it was Davy Crockett. Davy Crockett. It was black and white television. You know, in those days, to turn on the television, we had to walk up to the front of the TV and push a button. And we had to turn a dial to make the channels turn. And then we had to adjust the vertical and horizontal stuff to make it all come in right. But it was only black and white. The real famous kids were the ones who had color television. We didn't have it. Well, Davy Crockett wore a coonskin cap. And he was such a popular program on television that we all wanted a coonskin cap. I'll be right back. I still have mine. So this is the tail of a raccoon. That's where the term comes from. It's the coonskin cap. We're going to make Cassiopeia wear the coonskin cap. Can you say cap? Say cap. All right. So here's the cap. And now, it really looks kind of silly, doesn't it? Especially on a big man with a big head. But this is the coonskin cap. Now, the star name, though, is Cap. It sounds like an F on the end. Capf, PH on the end. So say Capf, Capf, Capf. Can you say Cap? You did. All right. That's the name of our star, Cap, our first new star friend. I'm going to write it up here. C-A-P-H. One more time, our first star friend is Cap. I guarantee you'll know this star the rest of your life. Now, there's another story here, though, that I have to tell you. I think I'm going to sit down in my chair again, because this is a long story. I'm going to tell you about Andromeda. Remember her? She was in crisis. And she was saved by her hero, Perseus. And he rode a special horse that had wings called Pegasus. And Andromeda's mother was Cassiopeia, but her father was King Cepheus. And there was an ugly sea monster in this story. His name was Cetus. And every one of these names is in the night sky in the fall. We're only going to see this in the fall, between September and Christmas. So don't look for it in the summertime. It won't be up. Let's talk first, though, about some stars. What is a star? I made a poem one time about my favorite star, and it's one that all of us know because we see it every day. Here's my poem. It's like a memory, no, it's like a pun or joke. What star comes out during the day, makes things grow, and then goes away? Do you know what that is? What star comes up during the daytime and then disappears and becomes night? Oh, sure, it's the sun, isn't it? Well, all the stars are just like the sun. They're burning balls of gas. And the Bible tells us that there are as many stars as there are grains of sand. But when you go outside, you only see about 2,000 of them, and that's only if you stay up all night long. Well, each of the stars also has a name, and that's why we're talking tonight. God tells us that He made the stars, and He gave them all names. And there's many stars as there are grains of sand. Well, we're just going to learn, like I said, 3 or 4. And I want to now talk to you about this Greek mythology, this story about Cassiopeia. And during that time, the Greeks thought the stars, they didn't know what they were. They had this idea. They thought stars were just clouds during the day, and then at night, the gods lit them on fire, and the clouds were the stars they saw in the sky, but there were actually clouds on fire in the sky. And some Indians down in South America said they were golden nails plugged into the nighttime sky. So all different civilizations had different names for stars, but we're going to talk about now the Greek mythology. So here's the story. Ethiopia is the country where Queen Cassiopeia and her husband, King Cepheus, reigned. And now, because Poseidon is upset with Queen Cassiopeia, he sends this giant sea monster to ravage the coast. And he begins to eat the boats that are trying to come into Ethiopia. And he sends a flood across the ground so that the people have to run up to the mountains to save their lives. King Cepheus is upset. His country is in great danger. And he says to an oracle, well, what do? I want to save my country. And the oracle says, the only thing that you can do, I'm afraid, is to sacrifice your beautiful daughter, the Princess Andromeda. The king really, of course, doesn't want to do that. And he has to think about it for a while. But while he's thinking about it, something else happens. And that is, there's a young man in a faraway island whose name is Perseus. And Perseus has gone on a special mission. He was bragging to his mother's fiancé that when they got married, he would give him the best gift possible. And Polydectes was his name. He was the king of this island. And Polydectes said, well, if you want to have the best gift, you have to go and bring me back the head of the Medusa. Have you heard of Medusa? Well, that's why your parents have to read to you about Greek mythology. Medusa and her 2 sisters were called the Gorgons. And you know how we have nice thin hair? Medusa's and her sister's hair was made from living snakes. Oh, that's right. There were snakes in her hair. Well, Perseus said he would do it, but he was scared because he had no idea how he was going to do it, but he wanted to make sure that he had the best gift possible for King Polydectes. So he quickly consulted with 3 gods, Hermes and Athena and Hades, and said, hey, can you guys help me? This is a huge job. What can I do? And Hades says, well, my son, I can give you my helmet. And it's a magical helmet, just like these magical days are. Because my helmet, if you put it on your head, you turn invisible. Nobody can see you. Perseus thought that was pretty good. Okay, but I have to go a long ways away. How do I get there? I can't row a boat that far. And then Hermes says, well, I'm the messenger of the gods. And I have special wings on my sandals. And you can take my sandals just for a little while, okay? I want them back. But if you wear my sandals, you can fly anywhere you want, as fast as you want, as far as you want, okay? Wow. Well, then Athena says, even though I'm the goddess of beauty and I need my mirror, my shield is so bright and shiny that you could use it like a mirror also. Because what they did not tell you about the Gorgons, the Medusa, is that if you look at her with your own eyeballs, you will turn to stone. So be careful and use my shield as a mirror. Well, Perseus was able to get good directions, and he flew on his winged sandals to the special cave on this tiny island far, far away. And he knew it was a cave because he see the entrance, and he saw some bats some bats flying out, and he heard some snuffling, snoring sounds inside. So he said, "This is it." Putting on his helmet, he's now invisible, with his wings, so he can be winged sandals, so he can be as quiet as possible. He goes into the cave, and it has lots of twists and turns to it. And finally, he gets so close he can tell because he can almost hear their breathing. He realizes that he can't look at them. He has to turn backwards now. So backwards on his standing up with his sandals, taking him silently, invisibly into the area where the three sisters were now sleeping. He sees Medusa, and through looking at the mirror, the shield, that's how he saw her. And he takes out this big sword that he has, and he quickly cuts off her head, right at the neck. Someone had given him a special wallet also, and it was magic because just like tonight, it could do anything. It expanded, and without looking, he picked up the hair of the snakes in Medusa's head and put them into the wallet, and it collapsed to a small size. He put it back to his belt, and he began to take off as quietly as possible, not to disturb the other sleeping Gorgons. Well, he was surprised, though. He had to jump back because there was suddenly like an earthquake, and the blood from the neck of Medusa had dropped on the ground, and the ground opened up. Oh! But out of it was a beautiful white horse. And this horse was so unusual and so beautiful, but most astoundingly, it could speak English, or maybe Greek. And it said, "Pegasus, we must hurry before they wake up. Get on my back." So Perseus did that, got on the back of Pegasus, and they flew out of the cave. Just as the Gorgons woke up and started trying to claw and get them, he was safe. Well, Pegasus with his wings took him straight back towards his island to see his new father, when they came across the shore of Ethiopia. And as he looked down high in the clouds, he was flying high in the sky with Pegasus. He looked down, and there was this beautiful woman who had been chained to a rock right at the edge of the ocean. And out at sea was this big monster, bigger than a whale, and big gnashing teeth, coming right for this beautiful daughter of the daughter Andromeda of Cassiopeia and King Cepheus. Well, instantly Perseus saw what a beautiful maiden she was, and she stole his heart. His heart went beat, beat, beat. He was in love at first sight, and he could tell she was in trouble. So he saw the monster, and he had a plan right away. He said, "Okay, beautiful maiden, don't look up here. Close your eyes." And she did. And then, with that, he swooped down close to the sea dragon, Cetus, and he pulled out Medusa's head, held her up. The sea monster looked at it and instantly turned to stone, because that's what Medusa does. Well, to this day, they say that if you look on the coast of Ethiopia, there's a large boulder that almost looks like a huge sea monster. 5,000 years later. Okay, star students, if you haven't figured out by now, the Wizard of the Stars loves poetry. And here's 3 of my favorite books by Shel Silverstein. Because now, for the next remaining time we have together, I'll share a couple poems from Shel Silverstein. So this one's Everything on it. This one, A Light in the Attic. And this one doesn't have a cover anymore because it's 50 years old, and I've loved it to death. At one time, I probably knew an hour and a half of poetry. But right now, I want to encourage you always to find a poem just for yourself, because a poem is like a vacation. You take it anywhere. You just bring it out. If you're feeling sad, make yourself happy, do a silly poem like this one. Let's pretend that your daddy was a good workman around the house, and he was always fixing the toilet. He had a good toilet plunger, okay? But you had a nasty brother. His name was Teddy. And so he always trying to trick you. This is what Teddy said. Or this is what you said about your brother Teddy. Teddy said it was a hat. And so I put it on. Now, Dad is saying, "Where the heck's the toilet plunger gone?" And that's a short poem. Now here's a bit of a longer one. Remember how I told you like 50 years ago, television was black and white? So here's a story about a little boy who watched too much television. I'll tell you the story of Jimmy Jett, and you know what I tell you is true. He loved to watch his TV set, almost as much as you. He watched all day, he watched all night, from the early show to the late, late show and all the shows between. He watched until his eyes were frozen wide, and his bottom grew into his chair, and his chin turned into a tuning dial, an antenna grew out of his hair. His brains turned into TV tubes, and his face to a TV screen, and two knobs saying Vert and Horace grew where his ears had been. And then he grew a little tail that looked like a plug. So we plugged in little Jim, and now, instead of him sitting around watching TV, we all sit around and watch Jim. Do you know somebody like that who watches too much Game Boys or the video games? You should be reading books and memorizing poetry. You can always have friends with your poems. Well, here is our friend. What's the name of the star again? Cap. Everyone say Cap, okay? On Cassiopeia. Now, I want to tell you where the rest of the story is. So if we draw a line from Cap to this star over here, this star is called the North Star. Everyone say North Star. This is not going to count for the 4 or 5 stars I'm going to teach you, but it's one that you can find if you have a compass. You can look right at the North Star. You're going to take this line, though, and keep drawing right across. You go about the same distance, and you're going to see there's another group of stars that look like a square. Does that look like a square to you? Well, that square is called the square of Pegasus. Remember our horse friend Pegasus? And if you look real carefully on a dark night when there's no moon, you can see some other stars up here and some stars that make his feet right here. So there's a horse kind of flying upside down. This is his nose up here, his head, and then this goes through his body. And we'll know the names of 1, 2, 3 stars if you can remember to repeat after me. There is never enough room. Say that. There is never enough room in Mark's cab. There's never enough room in Mark's cab for all fur rats. Well, that's silly because rats always have fur. But say that all together. There's never enough room in Mark's cab for all fur rats. Well, the thing about the stars is that the names of them are Arabic. They're not English names, they're Arabic. The word cap, for example, means hand. And so the Arabs, 600 years ago, saw these Cassiopeia as a hand in the sky. And then they would name a constellation by its position, the stars in that constellation by its position. So this first star means nose of the horse. And its name is Enif. Say the word Enif. Does it sort of sound like enough? Yeah, so enough room in where? Oh, Mark's cab. So let's make a cab out of our square right now. Put wheels on it, have a windshield, we'll have a driver in here. Then we're going to put marks all over it. Those look like marks to you? This is Mark's cab. Your friend is Mark. He likes to drive a taxi cab. So these are Mark's cab. And this is what it looks like. Well, Mark cab means saddle. So Mark's cab is the star named Markab, M-A-R-K-A-B. So excuse my back. Everyone say Markab. There's never enough room in Mark's cab for what? All fur rats. There's never enough room in Mark's cab for all fur rats. Well then, this next star we're going to learn is the star for horse's belly button in Pegasus. This star is all fur rats. A-L-P-H-E-R-A-T-Z. Enif Markab, and Alpheratz are the Arabic names for our lesson for today. So if you can remember these 3 stars and this one, those are the 4 stars that will be your new friends forever. Before we get started again about our friends in the night sky, I have to tell you just one more poem from Shel Silverstein's book, Where the Sidewalk Ends. Do you have a father or a friend who is a dentist? Do you know what a crocodile is? Have you been to the San Diego Zoo to see a crocodile? Well, can you imagine a crocodile with a toothache going to a dentist? Well, this is what Shel says. The crocodile went to the dentist and sat down in the chair. And the dentist said, "Tell me, sir, why does it hurt and where?" And the crocodile said, "I'll tell you the truth. I have a horrible ache in my tooth." He opened his jaws so wide, that the dentist just crawled inside. And the dentist just said, "Oh, isn't this fun?" And he pulled out the crocodile's teeth, one by one. But the crocodile said, "Oh, you're hurting me so. Please put down your pliers and let me go." But the dentist just said, "Oh, I still have 12 more to go. Whoops, oh, that's the wrong tooth. I must confess, but then what's one crocodile's tooth, more or less?" Then suddenly the jaws went snap. And the dentist was gone, right off of the map. One could only guess to north or south or east or west. He left no forwarding address, but then, what's one dentist, more or less? Now, back to the board, okay? Because we're going to review. When you go outside at night, this is what it looks like. There's no neon signs that say, "This way to Cassiopeia, over here to Pegasus." Can you find your friend Cap? Nope, you have to find the stars themselves. So which way do your parents direct you at night? To the north, that's right. Mommy, Daddy, where is Canada? Face Canada, put your right hand up, and you can put your fist right inside the square. That's how you know you have the square. Everybody's fist fits inside. No matter how long or short your arms are, how big your fist is, that length, arm's length, puts it right inside. So it's a beautiful square. It's not very bright. It's hard to see. So this is what it looks like. So let's review our story. There's never what? Enough room, where? In Mark's cab for all fur rats. I forgot to tell you that he was such a good driver that all the rats in the city loved to ride in his car. And he would drive through the street and the rats would come running out. And they would try to get inside, and sometimes they did, and he'd have to slam the door. Well, sadly, sometimes he slammed the door right on a rat right in the middle, so then his car was kind of gushy and gushy and kind of bloody too, but that's why there's never enough room. You had to get them out, okay? So, if this is our star friend on Cassiopeia, remember the M is Cassiopeia. That star's name is from Davy Crockett, king of the wild frontier, who had a coonskin cap. So there's Cap. And if you draw that line right over here, it points right to the square of Pegasus. So here's Pegasus. And we look way up above the square, and here's our friend Enif. And then as we go down towards Cassiopeia, the next star down is the horse's saddle. So the horse's nose, the horse's saddle, and then Alpheratz means horse's belly button. Now, if you have a naughty sister or a naughty brother, and maybe sometimes your mother's washed your mouth out with soap because you said a bad word, just call her an Alpheratz, right? Mom won't know what an Alpheratz is, and you just called her a belly button, right? A horse's belly button. Shh, don't let your mom know that I just said that. So when we go outside, sometimes it's going to be like this. It gets really confusing. So just be patient. Always look in the same direction, face north, but do it now in October and November and even in September. And then Cassiopeia, Perseus, the beautiful Andromeda. Andromeda is really this part of the sky. King Cepheus is over here, and Cetus, the sea monster, is down here. But for those stars, you'll have to have the Wizard of the Stars come to your house sometime for a special personal lesson. And you just have to contact Mansion Memories to make sure that happens, okay? I'm happy to do that because I want you to have as much fun in the night sky as I do. You know, when I'm driving across the desert here between, Barstow and Redlands, I much rather drive at night. I can tell directions by the stars. I don't need a GPS or a compass because the stars are my friends. And as a navigator, they told me north and south and east and west, just like those Polynesian navigators from 2,000 years ago who paddled their canoes all the way from Tahiti to Hawaii, thousands of miles, weeks at sea, using the night sky as a nighttime compass for those lighthouses in the sky. So the stars want to be your friends too. Practice saying them with your parents and your family, and teach a friend. Even though you're on Zoom now, tell a friend that you learned the name of the star Cap, and tell that friend how to find it, because your parents will tell you that when you teach somebody something, you learn it even better yourself. And that's why after 50 years, I'm still doing this. I'm not a navigator anymore, but I love the night sky because it reminds me that God made the stars. He calls them all by name, and he knows me, and he knows my name, and he knows that I care for him, and he makes me feel very loved. And that's why the stars are special to the Wizard of the Stars. Good evening, star students. This is the time that we have to say goodnight. But hopefully you have some new friends when it's good night for you, when you go outside. You know, although I just remember, I want to give you one more teeny tiny poem, because I so want to encourage you to be a poet also, to have these little secret vacations in your head. So here's another very easy poem that you can learn, because if you see me at Burridge Mansion, I'm going to ask you the name of a poem that you have learned, because I want you to learn one poem. So this one's easy. Listen to this one. If you're a bird, be a bird. An early bird, and catch the worm for your breakfast plate. If you're a bird, be an early, early bird. But if you're a worm, sleep late. Well, again, that's from Shel Silverstein. It's been my great fun to be the presenter for Mansion Memories, magical moments, and hopefully the sky has new magic for you as well. Remember always to support Mansion Memories. They're such a wonderful nonprofit organization, and they're here to provide joy for people who are in crises, just like Andromeda was in a crisis. Who saved Andromeda? Pegasus, right? No, because Perseus was on his back. It was Perseus who saved Andromeda, and Mansion Memories is to save families in crisis here in Redlands. Thank you.